This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources. Consistent with its running right process, Alpha is an energy company committed to being a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward. We fuel progress around the world. More information at alphanr.com.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com.
It's amazing what my students with special needs can accomplish. Their pride is priceless. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Jim Rothrock, the first commissioner of a newly named and organized Department of Aging.
You've already made a mistake.
Uh-oh.
It's Department, and I make this mistake often myself. Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services.
Oh, I got to watch those prepositions.
All the prepositions
Gotta watch
will get
those
you every time.
Yeah, yes. Well, that makes more sense. The four does make more sense. But prior to this particular assignment, you've served under 4 other governors and head of an agency.
I was fortunate to be at the Department of Rehab Services, which is the core of what DARS is now. And then in the Wilder administration was head of a very small advocacy agency that represented people with disabilities in special education or institutional care types of advocacy efforts. So I've been around a long time.
Yes, and I've had a great deal of experience and know that what you're doing, and part of our conversation today was to help our viewers look back some in history and see how we've gotten to where we are now. I don't know which one you want to start with. This summer is a 50th anniversary of one and
the
a 25th.
Older Americans Act. Let's start with the oldest.
Okay.
The Older Americans Act was signed into law 50 years ago. And it basically put together the network of services that Virginia is blessed with, to have 25 area agencies on aging that provide an array of services defined by their community to help feed vintage Virginians, transportation, information referral, some housing assistance. It's a wide array of services that the 25 provide that try to make sure that anybody that wishes to age in place or stay in their home can be provided the services that they need to have a life as independent as they wish to live.
You know, I like that word that you use, vintage.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't notice they were using that 50 years ago.
No, I can actually claim that when I got this job in 12 with the 2 different agencies, I was faced with the dilemma, what do we call our people that we serve? And I didn't like the word old. Yeah. And I didn't like the word senior. And you and I are, in fact, elders in our church. But that doesn't apply. So I locked my door one day and said, just leave me alone. And I said, I need to come up with a word. So I came up with vintage. And liking wine every now and then, I find that a much more appropriate adjective to describe me than the other one. So vintage Virginian is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yes, well, and those of us who are vintage or even those who are approaching vintage would hope that would catch on in 49 other states too. You probably didn't get it copyrighted or something.
No,
nobody else could use it.
No. And vintage Vermontians maybe, but the V helps out a whole lot.
Yeah, California maybe could do the vintage.
They could do. Yeah, they could have a rightful cause. But anyway, the Older Americans Act provided that core services of federal funding that we still get that really make sure that these vintage Virginians can get the services that they need to stay as independent as they can, and live a quality of life that we all aspire to.
So the area agency on aging work with Meals on Wheels?
They have contracts. Sometimes they work with Meals on Wheels, Feed More here in Richmond. Sometimes they have kitchens down in some of the more rural parts of the state. They have a kitchen themselves that they prepare food. Other times they'll contract with a hospital, and then they'll come up with a delivery system or congregate meals. One of the things that I like is we need to do everything we can to avoid social isolation. And if you can get somebody out of their home to a congregate site, they not only get a nutritional meal, but they also get interaction. And we're finding that more and more social isolation is as big a problem as we face. And there's actually medical evidence that being isolated from your peers is worse than over-smoking or over-drinking.
Well, I'm sure that many of our viewers are either vintage Virginians or they are related to vintage Virginians. So I guess the question then, Jim, would be, is there a income cutoff, or how does someone who's in any part of the state, you grew up in Martinsville, I've got roots in Southwest Virginia, we're both living in the metropolitan Richmond area now, but so someone seeing this, what should they do to check out to see if a relative or friend of theirs might qualify for
Well, they could go to our website, Department for Aging and Rehab Services, or to the Virginia Association of Area Agencies on Aging, and find very quickly one of the 25 AAAs that respond to them, and then contact them. There is some sliding scales for some services, but it's not a rigid eligibility that is there. And worst case, they can always get information on what's available in the community. And I continue to see so many troubling situations where people just don't know what's available. And there's stuff available if they would just avail themselves of it and pick up and make that first call. But you know, if you've got a disability or if you're becoming aging, making that first call is admission that you are now in that population. And that's tough for a lot of people to really make that leap.
You know, I've known some folks that have started that leap by volunteering in one of these agencies, whether they're a driver for Feed More or Meals on Wheels or doing some volunteer work, and then at a later point in their life, they were at home and someone delivered to them.
It's very helpful, and we use volunteers around the state very effectively. And it's just getting that awareness out there, and your example of a driver is perfect. I mean, the person knows the agency, knows what they do, and can very easily make the move to being going from a care provider to a care receiver.
Now, federal funds, do the federal funds flow into the states to help in this?
They come to our agency for the state, and we've got roughly $50 million. It's roughly 25 federal and 25 state that then go mostly to our area agencies on aging based on some formula grants. You know, in Northern Virginia, where the populations are really raising, they tend to get more money than my home Martinsville, which unfortunately has a decreasing population base. And by the time you factor in all the variables, you see a population-driven formula that helps us get the money where we need to. And it's really never enough because, as you well know, just looking around, the age wave is here. Baby boomers now in the Commonwealth are right under 1 million. In 15 years, they're going to be 2 million. I mean, the demographics are startling. You know, I'm 66. I don't think of myself old, but I qualify. And a lot of people around us, perhaps even you, would cross into that demographic.
Yes. Well, now let's move over to the 25th anniversary,
Right.
because there's in both of these, it's kind of unique, both in the agency that you're heading up. I don't know of any other agency head who can claim to be celebrating 50th and 25th anniversaries here in 2015.
I wasn't there when the Older Americans Act was signed
Right.
50 years ago, but I was there indeed 25 years ago when George Bush, the father, George Herbert Walker Bush, signed the Americans with Disabilities Act on July 26, 1990. I remember riding up on the train, pushing up a long, long hill on a very hot day to get to the White House, and got around. It was much easier then than it is now. We just kind of went on in the Rose Garden, or one of the lawns, and Bush made an incredible speech and signed a historic document that basically said that people with disabilities should be given access to all the other things that anybody else is, and the fact that they're disabled is not really a factor in their employment, their education, their voting, their transportation, their access to information. Really a transformational bill that Bush signed into law, and I think he continues to claim it as one of his crown jewels of his tenure.
Now, how has the federal funding side of that worked in that 25 years?
There's no money for
No money.
that.
No, none
you know,
at
we
all.
have money to help people get jobs. We have Social Security funds to help get people that are so disabled they can't work get funding, modest amounts, but it's survival money. There's been no real funding to implement the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's really a civil rights law. The Department of Justice does provide access to the court system. And one of the scary things about the ADA then and now is that it's worked out largely in the courts. There are court rulings that define whether a person should be able to be accommodated on an airplane or not, and it is, they are. One of the interesting things now that I see, which we didn't even conceive of 25 years ago, is access to dressing rooms and Nordstroms and Dillard's and those types of things.
Interesting.
And we didn't think of it 25 years ago. But now it's very important, and if you're going to go and try on a dress or a pair of pants, you might need an accessible dressing room or some equipment in the dressing room. And doctors' offices. I personally have a rough time getting up on the table that I used to be able to jump up on. So these are some of the newer issues that are creeping in, again, based on employment, transportation, housing, those core life activities that we all need some help in. And historically, prior to 25 years ago, disabled folks were really excluded. It was very difficult in the 60s and 70s growing up before the ADA, just getting into buildings. The college I went to was one of 3 colleges in the United States in 1967 when I went to college that I could have a great degree of independence.
You should give them a plug, too.
St. Andrews Presbyterian College.
Right.
Now St. Andrews University in Laurinburg, North Carolina was one of the 3 colleges I could go to in 1967. Still has a very accessible program. But now, 25 years later, I can go any place. I mean, and they're ready for me. At Bluefield,
Yes.
James Madison, William and Mary, VCU here in town. Most every place has been able to accommodate people with disabilities, and in so doing have helped us have a much more informed population that can step up to the plate and go to work and do the other things that everybody else wishes to do.
You know, when John Hager was lieutenant governor, I think at that time there were some modifications made to where the lieutenant governor would get up to the podium to preside, and so I guess one could say there had not been the necessity, and probably in many instances it's only when the necessity comes that some change is made.
Governor Hager was exemplary in, as Woody Allen says, showing up.
Yeah, right.
He showed up, and the Senate needed to say, whoa, we've got daises that are inaccessible. We've got his desk wherein he presides over the Senate that he can't get to. And in the building we're in now, some significant reforms were made. as he came in and while he was there that have been really helpful to letting the general public get in this hallowed building where laws are made and people need to be able to offer their 2 cents as to what laws are made.
And we'll let our viewers know in case they're wondering, what building is this in?
Oh, we're in the General Assembly building.
Yeah, we're
9th and Broad.
Yeah, we're in the
sorry.
building that's 4 different buildings cobbled together, and the building that may be on its last legs. We'll see what happens. And I would think too that the changes that were made in the Capitol when the major renovation took place, and that whole visitors area, that makes it accessible not just simply for someone who might be in a wheelchair or on crutches or whatever, but that was a major improvement to the old Capitol.
Oh yeah, whenever you do anything for a person in a wheelchair, for instance, or on crutches, you just open it up for everybody else. And it just becomes much more usable, from everything to getting food and goods in and out of a building to getting people in and out of a building. It just makes sense in the long run to go in and do it right, and it opens up buildings like the new Capitol to people to be able to come and see where laws are made.
Yeah, I hadn't thought that it would certainly help the UPS delivery people and all those.
They're the biggest fans of the ADA that ever was, because it got rid of their lifting requirements.
Yes. And the building that's a part of Capitol Square called Old City Hall, I can recall back when there was some kind of a mechanical metal lift.
Oh, on the outside.
On the outside that's over next to what's now the Patrick Henry building. And then that wasn't really working that well, so now they have a nice ramp that again helps everyone getting in and out of the building with any kind of material. So there's the changes.
And it's based on the format of the ADA. We're talking with making the governor's mansion more accessible. It is accessible, but making it even more so. The new buildings that will be coming up in Capitol Square, because the building code requires it, will have a much greater level of accessibility for everybody. So we're seeing that law is the precedent for years and years and years to come as to how we get in and around buildings.
The one here on Capitol Square that's been under renovation for, I guess, almost a year now, and still has the name visible now, Hotel Richmond.
Right.
Many of us knew it as the 9th Street office building. I guess that's really being improved as it's being renovated.
And it's not a choice anymore. For many years you could choose to put a ramp in or choose to widen the door. Now it's in the building code, and everything that is new is required to be built with basic accessibility features in it. And that was probably one of the bigger things that the ADA did, was to get those building codes such that new buildings from this date to this date were made accessible. Current buildings, there's a struggle. And when in Virginia we have so many historic resources, there's a lot of historic buildings, and there's always a debate about changing the physical character of a building, like Monticello. I mean, I would love to go in the upper dome of Monticello, but then understand that building a ramp to get in the door, you'd probably have to start in Roanoke to get a big enough head start to get up there. So there's a give and take as it relates to historic buildings and older buildings.
Yes. Well, you've lived through this time of these 25 years, so it's a great celebration.
Oh yes,
this summer. Yeah. Now, in some of our remaining time, talk about what's happening in the agency, and particularly maybe some of the innovations that are occurring.
We've got a couple really cool things going. One is more and more people deal with chronic disease, diabetes, blood pressure, breathing issues. And we developed, with a federal grant, a nifty little program, 6 weeks, where you go in and you and a group of 16 other people like yourself. It started off as elders, but we've moved it into not only elders, but people with disabilities, and have had some real success in our correctional facilities. And in these 6 weeks, you just learn to eat well, you learn to move, you learn to meditate. And we're seeing some striking results that show that people can manage these chronic diseases in a much better fashion, and in so doing avoid incredibly costly hospital costs for admission and unfortunately readmissions, which is many times the case. We also have developed a model working with people who are discharged from hospitals to make sure they don't go back quick, just by reminding them to take their medicines, go to doctor's appointments, move, eat well. As it relates to disability, we've got a thing called Project Search, where youngsters in their last year of special education move from the classroom into a hospital like Centera or here in town across the street at MCV or out at St. Mary's, and they have their last year of class time spent learning how to work in a variety of different jobs in the hospital.
Interesting. That's
Quite
innovative.
It's amazing. It's one of my favorite things. And you see youngsters who are not social, not assertive, lacking an understanding of their credentials, blossom from September to May. And they're not defined by the short bus they used to ride to school on. They're defined by their green scrubs, which their colleagues wear. And they're one of the group. And we've recently, about 80% of our graduates are hired by the hospitals. And we've even seen some bidding wars where X-ray will bid against medical records to try to get Tom to come work for them. And that's been really successful. And we've got 13 sites around the Commonwealth with about 100 youngsters in it a year. And about 80 of them are hired at the end of the year by that hospital. And their lives are changed. And the lives of the people that are their co-workers are changed even more so.
Yeah, their attitudes and everything else.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So with 13, that's getting all around the state. Any gaps, some areas that you're still working on, trying to hope?
We've got them out in Southwest, in Roanoke, and Blacksburg. We're in Williamsburg and Norfolk. We're in Prince William. Had some rough times getting into Northern Virginia, but continue to have discussions. And then right around Richmond. So we've got a pretty good base. We need an urban mass to make sure your hospital is big enough to have the array of curriculum choices and enough students to come up with a class of 8 to 10 people a year.
And so you must be working some with the Department of Education or
it's truly a collaboration between the local school system, our agency, private rehab providers that provide job coaching services, and they all come together in a wonderful fashion to bring about the supports that keep these youngsters engaged from September to May, and then most importantly employed from June to forever, we hope.
So some of our viewers who have someone in their family who could benefit from this, or a neighbor and a friend, what would be their first point of contact? Is it the local school system? Or?
They could bring it up with their local school, and it's really for the last year of special education. It's when the youngsters 21 to 22. And that's the model that we've done. We're hoping to break it out a little bit as time goes on. But if they're in special education, they can call their special ed teacher or let our offices. We've got 35 offices around the Commonwealth that can be easily found by going to just Google Virginia Department for Aging and Rehab Services.
For aging.
For aging. I got it right.
Not of aging.
Right.
Anything else that you'd want to mention, Jim?
No, I would just encourage everybody to take advantage of resources. I had a conversation just last week with somebody that is bright and has a lot of things going on, but has just chosen not to avail themselves of information and resources that they could take advantage of. And their life is such a struggle. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. If there's a lot of things out there, people should make themselves aware of them and then take advantage of them. That's what we're for here.
Is it pride? Is it just...
Pride's a piece of it. You know, it's tough. When you're in crisis, it's hard to think about grabbing the lifeline. It's easier to try to swim. But you need to stop swimming for a minute and grab the lifeline and pull in. So I can understand it's easier for me to say it than for others to do it. But our Commonwealth is pretty solid. Governor McAuliffe has been really helpful in helping us look at new employment opportunities. We've got collaboration going with our mental health system, the Department for Behavioral and Department for Behavioral Health and Developmental Services,
Yeah.
looking at how those youngsters can.
You got that title right for that, and our time is up.
Okay, good enough.
Thank you, Jim,
It's been
for
a
being on
pleasure.
This Week in Richmond.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources, a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.